Everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Haley Deshane, and I'm the events coordinator here at Eco Canada. Welcome to Deconstructing Unconscious Bias, Understanding and Minimizing Hidden Barriers. Before we start, I would like to take a moment to recognize the traditional Indigenous lands where Eco Canada's office is based in Calgary. At Eco Canada, we're committed to working towards respectful acknowledgement, collaboration, and reconciliation with Indigenous peoples across Canada. This starts with acknowledging our honor and privilege to live and work within the Treaty 7 territory. Today we are presenting from the City of Calgary, home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Districts 5 and 6. We would also like to take this time to acknowledge the traditional territories and oral practices of the Niitsitapi, home of the Blackfoot Confederacy, which includes the Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai First Nations, and the Tsuut'ina and Goodstoney, which include Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations. I also want to go over a few housekeeping guidelines for today's session to ensure that everyone can enjoy and participate in our session effectively. All participants are muted, so please check your audio settings to ensure that you can hear us properly. If you are experiencing any technical issues, please use the chat function on the left-hand side of your screen, and we can do our best to resolve it for you. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available for your viewing in 24 hours. Any questions that you have about the presentation or today's topic can be submitted through the question box, and we will have a dedicated question period at the end of the presentation. Finally, we really want to know what you think about our webinars and how we can keep improving. You'll be sent a short survey after the webinar ends. Please let us know what you think or if you have any comments or suggestions on the webinar. Now I'll pass it on to our wonderful speaker, Dr. Melanie Peacock. Take it away, Melanie.
Thank you, Haley, and hello, everybody. Thank you for joining in today. I am joining from Calgary, Alberta as well, and it's just so exciting to me to note that we have people from all across Canada and even some people from the United States joining us. Just a wonderful opportunity for us to learn together and explore the topic of unconscious bias. Also, if you happen to be watching at a later time and date, thank you for taking time to watch the webinar and really looking forward to exploring the material. So how are we going to do this? What are we going to do? Well, first, we're going to explore different forms of unconscious bias and how they impact our thinking and interactions with other people. So why? Why do we even care about this topic? Well, I'm sure you have your own why. You're taking time out of your valuable day to join in. But why is this topic so critical? Well, a deeper understanding will help us develop enhanced communication and interpersonal relationship abilities and competencies. Really, you're about to engage in a journey of self-discovery. So yes, it is all about you, and I hope you find that exciting. And how are we going to do this? Well, we're going to review some information, look at best practices, and how to apply these concepts. You know, I love research. I love theory. I love learning new material. But I always say if I had a t-shirt, it would say, so what? Well, it's one of the t-shirts I would have. And by so what, I mean, how do we apply this? How do we make it meaningful in our personal and professional lives? So, spoiler alert, I hope you're sitting down, hang on. This is going to be an interactive session. Yes, I'm going to be asking you to do some things. I know, you'd just love to sit for an hour and listen to me talk. Isn't that exciting? No. It's an interactive session. I'm going to be asking you to engage in some material, do some thinking, do some exploration. So here we go. I think it's important to, first of all, understand what is a bias. So here, as taken from dictionary.com, it's a particular tendency, a trend, an inclination, a feeling, or an opinion, especially one that's preconceived or unreasoned. Okay, so let's simplify that a little bit. You know, have you ever encountered a situation or met a person or read something and just gone, oh, I really like it, or oh, not my cup of tea? You know, it's that immediate guttural response. But often that happens just almost immediately. And it's not even something that we've given deep thought or reasoning to. But come on, this isn't your problem, right? This isn't something you do. You're astute, you're very civilized, you're a highly intuned person. So not your problem. Okay, I get that. Unconscious bias isn't your issue. But is it other people's problem? I'm having a sense here that you think other people suffer from this issue or are prone to this issue. That's why you wanted to join the webinar and learn more about the topic. So Haley has kindly set up a poll for us. So we're going to do an online poll. So I'm asking you, what percentage of the population do you think are subject to unconscious bias? So Haley will pop up the poll, and Haley, you let me know when a little bit of time has gone by and you think that there's been enough time for people to give their responses. And please let me know what our wonderful participants have had to share.
Yeah, we'll give it a couple more seconds. As of right now, we have 76% of our participants who have filled it out. So we'll give it a little bit longer to get a little bit more. But right now, we have 75% of people saying over 80%.
Interesting.
And then 20% say 66 to 80%. 5% say 50 to 65%, and 1% says 26 to 49%.
I should be humming the Jeopardy theme song, right? The name of that song, by the way, is Think, in case you didn't know that. There's an interesting little trivial.
All right, yeah, I've ended the poll, and yeah, numbers are basically the same. So 73% say over 80%, 19% say 66 to 80%, 6% say 50 to 65%, and 1% says 26 to 49%.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so drum roll, please. Really, all of us, 100%. Biases exist. If you have a brain, you have unconscious bias. Does this make you a bad person? Does this make you judgmental? Does this mean you're not open? Absolutely not. Our brains are wired this way. Unconscious bias goes way, way, way back to our ancestry as a form of survival. It's our brain's way of figuring out really quickly, am I endangered? Should I be approaching a situation in a certain way? How should I be interacting with people? What's going on in the environment? So a little bit of a trick question, because guess what? It is our problem. I like to think too, I talk about this. I've done a lot of research on it. Oh, come on. I can't be subject to unconscious bias. I know better, right? And yet, oops, I encounter situations, things happen, and I realize, oops, I could have had a V8. No, I could have had a deeper thought. We are all subject to unconscious bias. Again, it doesn't make us bad people. It makes us people, in fact, people with active working brains. So let's explore this a little bit more. Here's a little more interaction. You were forewarned. Okay, very high tech. I'd like you to either take out a piece of paper and a pen or open a Word document on your laptop or your desktop. And what you're going to do on the left-hand side is list the letters A all the way through H. A, B, C, D. You get it. And in the next column, beside each of those letters, A through H, you're going to write the word adjective. So I'm just going to give you a moment to either grab that pen and paper or open the laptop and create a Word document. Doesn't have to be anything fancy. Okay, I'm now going to show you some photographs. Don't want you to overthink it. Just what first comes to mind. So I'm going to ask you to write one adjective. For today's webinar, we'll just do one adjective by each photo. So we can see photo A. I want you to write an adjective, a word that describes this photo or this noun. that first comes to mind when you look at photo A? Do the same thing for photo B, C, all the way to photo H. I'm going to really encourage you to, whatever pops first thing into your mind when you see the photo, what adjective comes to your mind? Don't overthink it. Don't overcomplicate it. I'm just going to choose a few of the letters while you're doing that. And anybody that's willing to, I know Haley, and thank you, Haley, for assisting us today. If you want to pop in a few of your answers. So let's start with photo A. Come on, online community. Somebody, a few of you pop in the adjective you wrote, and Haley will be able to see it. Haley, what responses are we getting?
We have curious. We have little. We have pretty. We have gray.
Very interesting. Good. Let's pick another one. Let's pick F. Who would like to share in the online community? Love for you to pop in a few of the words.
We have hip.
Hip.
We have
love it.
funny. We have goofy. Sassy. Wise.
Cool. Very interesting. Love the array of adjectives. And last but not least, let's do one more. What the heck? How about H? Who would like to share their comments for H?
We have restful. We have unhealthy. We have fat. We have overweight. We have uncomfortable.
That's great. Haley, thank you very much. And thank you to the online participants for sharing your initial impressions. Okay, one of the reasons we went through this exercise was to show you that it is human nature. It's not difficult when we encounter a situation or encounter another person, we do form immediate opinions. Those biases, that thinking process is deep rooted within us. Again, it's a natural human tendency. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to explore those photos a little bit more. And as I show you each photo, I'd like you to write down one or two adjectives that pop into your mind based on what you see. So let's do that. Photograph A. When we see the whole picture, right? When we see the whole photograph, this brings to mind a very historical event. And we see more of that little pretty girl in the gray coat. Okay, what are one or two adjectives for photo B now that you see, again, a bigger context? Let's do that for photo C. We're sensing a pattern here, right? D. E, F, my goodness, has she become hipper? Sassier? G, and H. Now, thank you for engaging in that process with me. Be very curious, just quickly. Let's go back to photo A. Who would like to share? Again, Haley will look for it in the comments. Thank you, Haley. A few of the adjectives. Did they change? Were they the same? Once you saw the bigger picture. And of course, the funeral procession for Kennedy. Haley, what kind of words are popping up for the full picture for photograph A?
So for A, we have mourning, we have sad, we have devastating, we have somber, we have distracted, and a lot of repeats of those.
Yeah, thank you. Interesting too, some of the same words, the same repeats. That's very interesting, isn't it? Let's do the same thing for H, since this is where we ended up. Love for people to share the adjectives.
We have fitness, we have rehab, we have active, we have determined, motivated, and
Perfect.
disciplined.
Disciplined. Wow, thank you. Thank you, Haley. And thank you to the online community for sharing your ideas. Now, what I'm hoping that this exercise shows is that further proof about what the research shows is that if we have a brain, we have a bias. We tend to see part of something or part of someone's story, and we form impressions. It's just the way we are wired. Those unconscious biases creep in. But when we see a bigger picture, when we're looking for more complete or fuller understanding of the complexity of a situation or an individual, we still might have biases, we still might have ways that react, but we tend to open up to more possibilities. We tend to seek deeper understanding. One of the things that's critical with that is even how we look at what's commonly called the circle of differences. You know, the biases creep in, we might say, typical ways we look at someone's gender identification or their height or their size or their language or their race or their religious beliefs. But to understand at a deeper level, that circle of differences can be so much more encompassing. An interesting one to me, and again, this is based on research, is we can form biases and opinions about people just based upon how long they've been in their current role. You know, can someone be really proficient when they're so new at something? It's interesting. My husband and I have recently started watching reruns of The Rookie. Nathan Fillion is the star, and he's from Edmonton, which is just north of us here in Calgary, Alberta. And one of the big premises of the show is he's older, but decides to become a rookie in the police force. And because he has age experience and life experience, but not experience in the job, that's a theme running through the entire episodes, and how people act and interact with him, how their biases towards him in that unique situation come through. And no, I haven't been sponsored by Netflix or by Nathan Fillion Fan Club. There we go. Things such as neurodiversity. You know, I'm pointing my fingers this way. I've had interesting experiences as an educator, I will share with you, interacting with students for over 30 years. And Full disclosure, 30 years ago, we didn't talk about or think about neurodiversity. And I would interact with someone and think, why aren't they listening? Why aren't they interacting? Why aren't they engaging? Why don't they seem to love more? Not understanding that the way they process and interact with information can create a difference that needs to be acknowledged and honored and respected. And my biases were coming through without me really realizing. So I'll invite you to think about the circle of differences. And this is just a sampling. There's so many differences that actually make us stronger, but also really tend to bring out our biases when we meet someone that's different than us or encounter a situation that we're not familiar or comfortable with. Again, I'm going to repeat this or stress it. Doesn't make us bad people. It's the way our brains are wired. So why do we even care about this? Okay. Has huge implications to recruitment and selection, how you actually bring people into your organization. Biases can really derail or limit the success and the strategic contributions of recruitment and selection. If we don't explore this topic, we don't think about it a little deeper, we're really limiting who we're asking to join our organization. It even impacts our learning and development initiatives. I've worked with clients, worked with organizations who structure their development opportunities without thinking about, they have a bias towards, this is how they should be delivered. This is how they should be offered. Think about online versus hybrid versus totally in person. There's a bias, there's a tendency. And if we don't think about that deeper, if we don't explore it, we're again limiting who can benefit from our program offerings. Performance management. Oh my gosh, how much time do we have? I've worked with so many clients when I look at and examine, walk through and audit their performance management systems and how their leaders, managers, supervisors, whatever words we want to use, engage with and interact with people when assessing their performance and contributions, their own biases, and even the bias of the people that are being evaluated. So much interaction and convolution can really impact and in some ways derail the performance management system, which in turn can limit, fog, for the lack of a better word, who's getting promoted, who we even think about as far as succession planning, who is potentially a great fit for advancement in our organization. So all of this, as we move and interact with other people and think strategically, and how are we going to make this all better and more strategic and more meaningful, it really ultimately impacts our teamwork and our collaboration, and basically how we communicate with one another. And I don't know about you, but after a few years on this planet, teamwork, collaboration, the words we use verbally and in writing, how we communicate with one another, all of those things have such powerful impact interpersonally and professionally. They have the ability to make such a difference, and really in many ways can make or break relationships, can make or break the effective achievement of an organization's strategic goals. So this is why it's all so critical. Ultimately, it's complicated. You're like, yay, I'm so glad I showed up to find out it's complicated. It's trying to get all these different pieces to fit together to make it work. All of these things, ultimately, unconscious bias is having an impact on the culture in your workplace. It's impacting so many processes, procedures, systems, the interpersonal reactions, interactions. It's having an impact on your organizational culture. I will share with you unconscious bias, as complicated as it is, and you try to figure it all out, is also impacting your personal relationships. So I hope through these little exercises we've done and through that information I've run through with you, it's proven to you, hey, this is worth my time, this is worth my effort, this is an important topic. Okay, so let's look through some examples of unconscious bias. As the slide says, it's unconscious bias in the workplace, but I invite you to think about how this could impact or how you've seen this come to life, even in your personal relationships and interactions. Confirmation bias. We as human beings like to be right. Imagine that. If I wanted your opinion, I'd give it to you. No. All right. Confirmation bias. I'm going to say that again. We want confirmation that our thinking, that our beliefs, that our value systems are correct. So what we tend to do is we look for news stories that back that up. It's interesting, a colleague of mine recently traveled. We won't get into the politics and all of that, but recently traveled to the United States. And when they came back, they said to me, it was really interesting. In the hotel, when they turned on the TV, what first popped up automatically, no choice, you hit the channel plus to get off the welcome channel, Fox News. And they said, if you listen to Fox News, and they did for the first 10 minutes, there were praises and all good things and all these stories about a certain political leader that made this individual sound wonderful. There's my technical word for the day. Write that down. Wonderful. And they were just gobsmacked. They just couldn't believe it. So hit the channel plus after that. And then they found another news network where it was almost the opposite. Another news station, but the stories were that this certain political leader was doing things that were destructive, that weren't research-based, that weren't based in reality, to use an exact quote from the news story. But what's so interesting, same country, two different news stations, very, very different stories, information being shared. But it's interesting to look at who watches each of those news stations. And you tend to, if you are in favor of a certain political leader, you would watch Fox News. If you had issue or problems with this certain political leader, you would watch another major network. You wanted confirmation. You wanted to know that your thinking was correct. So you seek out information that does that. Not only news stories, we tend to seek out people who think the same way we do. It helps to confirm that, hey, I know what I'm doing. If my buddy Paula thinks this way, then I must be correct. If my buddy Jeff thinks a certain way, oh, yeah, look at that. We know what we're doing. I invite you to, if you haven't had the opportunity, to explore the work of Adam Grant. I've read many of Dr. Grant's books, but one of the pivotal books that I really enjoy is a text called Think Again. And I'm oversimplifying here, so please forgive me, Dr. Grant. Adam Grant talks a lot about one way to get over this is to purposefully, on purpose, with intention, have a conversation with someone we know does not think about an issue the same way we do. Ooh, that makes me uncomfortable. I don't know about you. I'm being honest here, folks. I'm being transparent. I don't like it. It really does make me uncomfortable. But to push myself and listen, it means a lot of listening. If I'm going to get over some of this unconscious confirmation bias, my goal or objective in having a conversation with someone, again, purposefully and intentionally, who I know does not think the same way about something, is not to convince them that they're wrong, but is to listen to their way of thinking and their reasoning behind it. It opens up so much possibility. Okay, another form of unconscious bias is called anchoring. This is where, again, as human beings, our natural tendency, we have a brain, so this is the way they work, is to glob onto the first piece of information, particularly if it really stands out to us. Salespeople use this unconscious bias against us very regularly. So for example, a lot of time car salesmen are taught to show us a vehicle that's very fancy, maybe a little bit out of our price range, has all the bells and whistles, because that's the first piece of information that we'll see. And then when they show us the next vehicle, we thinking, oh yeah, this is really good because look at the deal I'm getting. This is a much better price. This is a much better value. You don't realize that you've anchored that thought process against the initial information that was presented to you. Think about this. I don't know if you've ever noticed, or the next time you're out to dine, look at the menu. If you do want to enjoy a glass of wine, if you don't, that's fine. But even if you look at the wine list, have you ever noticed there tends to be at least one really expensive bottle of wine on the menu? I've done that and I've gasped. I'm like, oh, who would spend that kind of money on a bottle of wine? Wow, I don't know that I could enjoy it. It's done intentionally as part of anchoring. Anchoring bias would mean that price is going to really stick out to you, and it'll be the first piece of information you're going to go, wow. And then you'll tend to take the next most expensive bottle of wine. So you're not seen as being cheap, but you're certainly not taking that high priced beverage. Again, that's done intentionally. Restaurants will tell you that they rarely sell that most expensive bottle of wine. So why would they even put it on the menu? Well, it's done purposefully to attract your attention. You anchor your understanding based on that, and it impacts how you view everything else. Recency bias. Think about it. My memory's good. It's just short. We as human beings tend to act and react based on what we have most recently experienced, seen, or heard. Wow, think about this when it comes to performance management. Have you ever been in a situation where you think, okay, I've had a great year? You go in, you chat with your supervisor, and they really tend to focus on what's happened in the last month to 2 months, even though it's an annual performance review. That is very common. People, again, tend to focus on what has happened in the near past. That can be very detrimental. You're not thinking about the full picture. I used to joke with my students and I'd say, look, recency bias is a thing. If you're going in for your performance review and you know it's an annual review, here's my tip. Don't mess up in the 2 weeks before your performance review. You could have a great year, but if you mess up in the last 2 weeks before you go in to chat with your supervisor, things could go awry. Shouldn't happen if we're well trained and well aware of recency bias, but research shows, my own personal experience with clients shows that this happens. Comparison bias. We come to conclusions by comparing what we've just been exposed to what we're currently exposed to. It just happens. It's a natural tendency. So I've had students, I've had clients that I coach ask me, okay, so if I get called in for an interview and I'm given a choice, should I go first thing in the morning? Should I go before lunch? Should I go after lunch because then they'll be full, or will they be sleepy? Should I be the last person in the day? Well, like, how should I do it if I have a choice as to when I'm going to be interviewed? So I tell them with a very straight face, I said, well, find out who the most incompetent, worst person is that's going to be interviewed, and then go right after them. Now, of course, that's ridiculous. You don't know who else is going to be interviewed. You don't know what's going to happen. But that's comparison bias. If you have to go in to meet with someone, to present, to do anything, you're going to be compared to the person who went before you. Unless, more on this later, spoiler alert, unless the interviewers are well trained and well aware of this unconscious or comparison bias. Let's let's go through a few more forms of unconscious bias. Halo effect. This is when you immediately act or interact with someone and there's something about them you like. There's something there that you say, you know, I like the way that they speak. I like that they're wearing my favorite color. Hey, they went to the same school I did. We have the same alma mater. You take one piece of information and unconsciously, again, this is how your brain is processing this, and you say, so everything about them must be good. One piece of them, one information, one part of them, something that represents them is something you like. And for ease, your brain attributes that good quality to everything else about them. The opposite also holds true. Good old brain working away here. The horns effect. You meet someone, you interact with them, something about a situation you don't like. They went to the school. Oh, that's my competitor school. That's not good. They must not have good decision-making skills. They must not have good communication skills. They must not have good personality. You start to attribute one negative thing that you think about a situation or an individual, and you make that pervasive to everything about them. All right. This is the part where you get to hear the theme music. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. Availability or mental shortcuts. This is where you have one piece of information and it really sticks out to you and it impacts and affects how you view or how you behave in a whole bunch of other situations. So the reason I was doing the, yes, hopefully you're like, don't quit your day job. It's a good thing I'm not, karaokeing here. The reason I was trying to do the Jaws theme for you, and hence our friend the shark, is people are so afraid of shark attacks. Now, I didn't plan this, obviously. I worked on the presentation a few weeks ago, but just this weekend, I heard about a shark attack on the news. I'm watching the news and it was horrible. It was in Australia. Person didn't make it. I'm so sorry. It was awful. But the news story, like as I was watching it, it was so sensational and so awful. Like this person was attacked by a shark, surfer in Australia, didn't make it. It was so sensationalized and it was like, ugh. People become very afraid of. Think about it. Have you ever gone to a beach or the water and you looked, okay, or does it say shark warning? Should I something that, like, you just automatically start to look for it, right? That's your mental shortcut. Believe it or not, there's a greater probability of you getting harmed or killed by a coconut falling on your head while you're visiting the beach than you being killed in a shark attack. Talk about using your coconut, getting attacked by a coconut. Can you believe that? But if you ask the average person, what are you more afraid of, coconuts or sharks? I think most people will tell you sharks. But I'm going to say that again. There's lots of research that will show you're more apt to be hurt or killed by a coconut falling on your head than you are to be killed by a shark. But our unconscious bias takes that availability and that mental shortcut because of what we've been exposed to and the sensationalism, and it impacts our thinking and our actions and our decisions going forward. The affinity bias. We also call this the mirror effect, and we've talked a little bit about it, but it's more specific in that we like people that remind us of ourselves. We like to be around people that are like us. Not just think like us, they talk like us, they dress like us. Maybe they're in the same profession as us. Think about how many people in your day-to-day life that you silo with that are very much like you. And we have an unconscious predisposition to gravitate towards people like that. And last but not least, attention bias. So we're going to do another little exercise. Are you still awake out there? Okay, there you go. Forewarned is forearmed, and Haley's going to help us out again. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put out a slide. And I'm going to ask you, this is a little bit of an honesty thing, not to write anything down. You don't have to write anything down. I just want you to stare at the words on the next slide for about 5 seconds. I'm going to give us the 5-second countdown, okay? So I'm going to show you a slide. Again, I'm asking, please don't write anything down. Just try and remember the words on the next slide. Okay, here we go. Okay, so just show of hands, reaction, or you can type in yes into the comments. How many people remembered the word pajamas? Just asking you to be honest. Haley, do we have some people who are indicating that they remember the word pajamas?
We have lots of people indicating that they remember pajamas.
I love pajamas. Okay. How about the word rejuvenate? Do we have people remembering the word rejuvenate?
A lot of people still remembering rejuvenate.
You guys are so smart. Can't get anything by you. Okay. How about the word sleep?
That one is more of a mix. We have a lot of people saying no, but we do have a few people saying yes.
Fair enough. Okay. And there's me being a little trickster, hey? Because as we go back, yeah, the word sleep isn't there. But this is the way our brains work, right? Another form of unconscious bias. All of the words seem to, relate to sleep. And that's the way attention goes. And you gravitate to that word. So thank you. Thanks for participating. Okay, so what does this all mean? Back to my favorite t-shirt. So what? Way that we can bring unconscious bias into our consciousness to make attempts to change. Never to be perfect. That's not what we're looking for. Like I've shared with you in transparency and authenticity, I still catch myself. I still have to work on this. It's a never-ending work in progress, but that's good. The fact that I'm willing to continue to work, right, is we need to question things. We need to actively explore this. And we will then enhance our workplaces, not only for ourselves, but for those around us, and even our personal lives. So this is my invitation to you to think about things differently and to be a part of meaningful change. So how do we do this? So what? My first thought process that I invite you to explore is, can you expand your circles? We talked a little bit about circle of differences. I invite you to think about who's in your circle. Can that be expanded? Are you willing to put yourself into a little bit of discomfort and be around different types of people? A cute story, when my son, who's now 30, when he was very young, when he was a toddler, he was obsessed with garages. That sounds a weird thing. Okay. And we would drive by places and he'd look at garages and he'd meet people and he'd ask me, he says, how many garages do they have? Not where do they work? What kind of car do they drive? How many garages do they drive? And at one time I looked at him and I said, honey, this person might not even have a garage. And he seen his eyes like, what? And he started to understand, expanding his circle. Just because everybody we knew in our socioeconomic class happened to have a garage, at least one, doesn't mean that everybody did. And it's kind of a silly example, but just by expanding his circle, he still remembers that moment. He was 3 at the time, 30 now, do the math, 27 years later, he still remembers that. Another way to really bring your unconscious biases to a more elevated or conscious level is mindfulness, is to question your immediate thoughts and assumptions. If you feel all of a sudden your gut going, "Ooh, I like this," or "Ooh, I don't like this," why? Like pause, reflect, think about this, and say, is there data? Is there information to support what I am thinking, feeling, and reacting to? Or is it more visceral? Being willing to stop, reflect, and then do a deeper dive or examination is one way to address unconscious bias. Another thing that's really critical and happens a lot because of unconscious bias are microaggressions, right? You'll hear someone say to someone, I'm going to give you a few examples. Wow, your English is really good. Wow, I didn't know you'd celebrate Christmas. Wow, for your age, you're really good at technology. People mean these comments usually in a positive way. They're trying to be nice, they're trying to be encouraging, but what it really is doing is showing that they have an unconscious bias, and it's coming through in their conversations and interactions and communication with other people. So one way to bring this into the light, to illuminate them, is to challenge it when you see it, when you hear it, both personally and professionally. You know, when somebody says something, see something, hear something, say something, do something. You know, exploring this, elevating things. I love this quote from Ford: to change your mind is the best evidence you have one. You know, we don't have to be so rooted in how we approach things, how we think about things, how we interact with other people, how we just let things around us happen. That's the way change will happen. I wanted to give you some actual ideas as we wrap things up here today. So for recruitment and selection, how do we elevate, illuminate some of our biases, and maybe even eliminate them? Think about our job postings. Where do we offer? Where do we share opportunities? What's the wording we use? Even the font size, the color of the text we use, these seem such minor things, but how we present these opportunities and where we present them can often change once we realize we have some biases in how we approach the process. I'm going to throw out a radical idea here. Interview questions. What if you gave every candidate the questions you're going to ask them during the interview before the interview? What is she saying? What's going on? Well, why do we interview people? Is it to trick them? Is it to put them on the spot? Or is it to actually get to know them better? I've worked with and communicated with so many, for example, neurodiverse individuals that say if they could have the interview questions in advance, it really changes and levels the playing field. What a different approach, and gets rid of some of our bias and also changes how different candidates can act and interact with us during an interview process. Also, think about the interview panel themselves. How many people are the actual interviewers? Do you have an array of people with diverse experience, ideas, and opinions actually doing the interviewing? Even the people selecting who will be coming in, who will be invited in for an interview. Even during that selection process, many organizations continue to use redacted or anonymous resumes. So that's where you take out the candidate's name or any identifying factors that would give away their age, their gender, their ethnicity. That helps to remove some of the bias, again, that can naturally happen when you're choosing who to interview. Something just as simple as the communication material your organization uses. Is there any bias that you hadn't thought through that's coming through in your company material? You know, do you have a diverse array of photography, different people shown, different situations shown in any of your publications, on your websites? Just this morning, it's interesting, I was thinking about and looking forward to interacting with all of you today. I was in another meeting and someone was talking about that they have a lot of Indigenous artwork in their company. And it's something I hadn't given a lot of thought to previously. And it was a way to support the Indigenous, but also to show respect and value for that. What language is being used in your company communication? Is any of your bias coming through? Is there something that could be re-examined now that we've explored some of the different types of unconscious bias? If you re-examined some of your workplace policies and procedures through the lens of those different types of biases, is there something that you could and should change? Let's think about accountability. You know, one of my favorite sayings, oh, I've got many, I guess, what gets measured gets done. So another way to find out, is there a bunch of unconscious bias that's impacting our company's operations? Look at your retention rates. Who's leaving your company? Does it tend to be people that are part of certain groups? And that information itself can tell you, oops, maybe we're doing things, again, not purposefully, but maybe we're excluding people, maybe we're not reaching them in ways we should, maybe we're not being respectful, because the data is showing that certain groups of people are leaving our company more than other groups. It's not always just about where people are going. What about how people are using the programs that we offer? So again, looking at the data, measure who's attending your training sessions, who's engaging with the information you provide. Look at who is getting promoted, who is being listed on your succession plans. You know, is there a trend? Is there a group missing? All of these things can signal perhaps there's unconscious bias happening at different levels that needs to be examined, and great opportunities for change. The last thing that I'll share, and here I am speaking with you and you're here, and thank you so much for engaging with the material today, but is training. We need to be able to train people on this topic, because once we're exposed to it, you can't unsee it, right? We can always get better. We can always improve, but to bring this topic into the light, to illuminate that unconscious bias happens, not because we're bad people, but we're people. And we're tootling along on the face of the earth, doing our thing, trying to make things better. But let's train managers about the performance management process and potentials for unconscious bias. Let's train all employees so they understand that they have a role to play in minimizing it. Let's re-look at our recruitment and selection processes. I'm just giving you some examples, but that training, having conversations, being able to explore and invite conversation and exchange of ideas without criticizing, without condemning, just a great way to encourage growth and further development for all of us. Now, I appreciate that you're all very, very busy and you're going to rush back to your work and your daily lives when we get through today. So I really want to encourage you, before you go back to your desk, your personal lives, to write down one or two things that you took away from our time together today. What's one thing, maybe two, what's one thing that you're going to do differently? Or one thing that you're going to say, hey, that was a good idea. I don't want to forget that. I want you to be able to take something meaningful away and implement it based on the information you were exposed to today. I'm asking you to take a leap. It's not easy, right? It's not easy to admit, oh, I have some biases that I don't want to admit that oh yeah, I do. It's humbling. It's a bit it can be humiliating too, I'm being honest, but it's through that growth, through that willingness to take a jump and to be courageous, that's where life will get better for you. I can guarantee it. And really, you're going to make things better for people around you. And that, my friends, is powerful. I thank you so much for our time together. I'm an academic, right? I listed my references. Here they are. If you want to stay in touch, I am on X, just the website for my company. I'm on LinkedIn, Dr. Melanie Peacock. If you send me an invitation, I'd love to connect. It's a great way to just, I post often, share information, love learning with and from other people. And of course, I have an Instagram account as well. Haley, I'm going to turn it back to you because I notice not my first rodeo. Hey, 5 minutes. We have a little bit of time for questions.
Yes, thanks so much, Melanie. That was awesome. We have a lot of people sending hearts and thumbs up and applauses, and people in the chat saying that you're such a great teacher. And I have to agree, that was a great presentation. We have a few questions here. Remember, if you have questions, submit them through the chat box. So we will see how many we can get to within the 5 minutes we have. So first off, we have, can we explore how those of us who don't work within organizations experience or perpetuate unconscious bias? I think a number of us may be students, job seekers, or freelancers. So it would be great to get opinions from them.
Yeah, thank you for the question. The concepts that we've explored today, as I said, can be applied to your personal life as well as any interaction professionally. You don't have to be part of a formal organization. Even as a job seeker, let me answer that one part of that question. You know, you look at a job posting and you think, oh, I'm not qualified for that. Okay, why do you think that? I have worked with so many people who will tell me, oh, I'm not applying for this job, I'm not applying, because unconsciously they have this bias, right? That they can't do this, they don't have a certain type of experience. It limits our thinking. What I would encourage you to do is ask people in your trusted circle. So many times I've dealt with people who underestimate themselves and their ability to contribute. So don't do that. I'm going to be very specific in my response. It's a broader question, but you know, as a job seeker, as a student, don't undervalue yourself. Your unconscious bias can often lead to that, and I don't want you to do that.
Awesome. Thanks, Melanie. We actually don't seem to have many other questions here. It's just people saying that this was really eye-opening, and that this was a great refresher for just the everyday life. That this was, yeah, fantastic. And we have someone here who is actually an old student of yours who said they miss attending your classes. Oh, and then they have a question too, sorry. How can I help be a change agent for those who aren't aware of unconscious bias?
Thank you. And just a big heart out to any of my former students here and out there in the etherverse. I have just been so blessed, and that's not me being biased. I speak the truth. I've been so blessed to just have the most amazing students who have, sounds cliche, but it's true, taught me more than I could ever teach anybody else. All right, how to be the change agent. And I get this question actually to deal with microaggressions too. Like, hey, you just said to call people out, but that can be uncomfortable. And how do I be a change agent? Okay. You do this not aggressively or accusatory, is that a word? Not accusing anybody, like, hey, what did you mean when you said, and you know, whoa, I heard you say to Melanie, oh, you're pretty good with technology, even though you're old. That's approach things through a lens of inquisitiveness. Hey, you know, the other day in the meeting, I overheard you say to Melanie, hey, I'm really impressed that you use technology, even though you're old. What did you mean by that? Like, what was your intention? And not like in an angry, like in an inquisitive voice. And sometimes people, when you ask them questions and just want to know more, and then you have that conversation and you slip in some of your knowledge, it's bueno. You're helping people, you're illuminating unconscious bias, but you're doing so in a non-confrontational, really collaborative manner. Ask questions.
That's awesome, Melanie. Thank you so much for your presentation and for answering a few of those questions. That is all of our time for today, but thank you everyone for coming and attending, and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.